300 meters of open water. That was all that stood between the unmanned surface vessel and one of the most heavily defended warships in the Black Sea Fleet. 300 meters. And every single centimeter of it was watched. The missile corvette sat anchored in the outer roads of Sevastopol's naval fortress, a gray steel predator that had launched cruise missiles at Ukrainian cities, enforced the blockade, survived every attempt to reach it. Patrol boats ran rotating 4-hour watches. Sonar buoys were seated across the approach channels. Shore-based radar arrays could track a seagull at 5 kilometers. Attack helicopters flew perimeter patterns every 90 minutes. The ship's own crew maintained a 24-hour combat watch, eyes on the water, hands near the close-in weapons controls. The Russians believed this warship was untouchable. The Ukrainian naval operations team believed otherwise. What happened in the final 4 minutes of that approach, the split, the vectors, the detonations, is what we are going to reconstruct today. Because what it revealed about the balance of power in the Black Sea is something no official statement, no press briefing, no sanitized military communique has fully conveyed. I'm your host at Ukraine Radar, where we analyze the battles that change wars. Today, we are breaking down one of the most technically sophisticated unmanned naval operations ever conducted in a live combat zone. A strike that did not just damage a warship, a strike that shattered a strategic doctrine. Stay with me. Because the story of how this happened begins not on the water, but in a signals intelligence cell that had been watching this corvette for more than 11 weeks. The Black Sea Fleet spent years adapting to the threat of Ukrainian naval drones. The early Sea Baby operations. The ones that struck the Olenigorsky-Gornyak landing ship. The ones that harassed the Kerch Bridge approaches. Forced Russian naval planners to completely rethink their harbor defense doctrine. By the time the full-scale offensive entered its current phase, the Black Sea Fleet's protocol for anchored capital ships in Sevastopol roads had been redesigned from the hull up. The new system layered 5 distinct defensive rings. The outermost was electronic, a network of shore-based radar stations operating on multiple frequency bands, cross-referencing contacts to filter wave clutter from genuine threats. Inside that, a maritime patrol zone maintained by fast attack craft, each equipped with spotlight arrays and thermal imaging. The third ring was acoustic. Passive sonar buoys seated in the approach lanes, tuned to detect the specific acoustic signatures of low-profile surface vessels running electric motors. Then came the shipboard active defense suite, the corvette's own radar, its electro-optical sensors, its close-in weapon system capable of engaging surface targets at ranges up to 1,500 meters. And finally, the human element, a dedicated lookout team on the ship itself, rotating every 2 hours, conditioned to treat every shadow on the water as a potential threat. This was not improvised. This was a defense system built by people who had studied Ukrainian naval drone tactics and developed specific countermeasures to defeat them. The Ukrainian team had studied those countermeasures for 11 weeks. Satellite imagery analysis confirmed the patrol craft rotation schedule. 4-hour intervals, with a predictable transition period of approximately 11 minutes as the outgoing boat returned to dock and the incoming boat took its position. SIGINT collection revealed the radar frequency rotation pattern, letting Ukrainian electronic warfare planners identify windows when multi-band cross-referencing was degraded. Acoustic intelligence work established that the sonar buoys had a detection threshold. Small, low-signature vessels running at minimum power in sea states above Beaufort scale 3 generated insufficient acoustic signature to trigger reliable alerts, which meant the strike required 2 things simultaneously: a sufficient sea state to mask acoustic signatures, and precise timing to thread that 11-minute patrol transition window. For 6 weeks, those 2 conditions had never aligned. The meteorological models kept producing the same result. The right sea state arrived during daylight hours, when visual detection risk was unacceptable. The right timing window arrived in flat, calm conditions, when acoustic detection was near certain. The team ran the models again and again. They adjusted parameters, explored alternative approach vectors, considered whether a decoy element could draw the patrol boat out of position early. Then the atmospheric pattern shifted. A front moving across the northern Black Sea created a sustained sea state of Beaufort 4 across the outer roads, enough wave interference to degrade the sonar buoy network below detection threshold. The weather window was projected to hold for approximately 9 hours, beginning in the late evening. The patrol boat transition fell precisely within that envelope. The operation was authorized. Which weapon system was at the cutting edge of this strike? A standard naval torpedo BC Baby unmanned surface vessel Sea Storm Shadow Cruise missile? The answer is coming, and understanding what these drones are actually capable of will change how you think about modern naval warfare. The Sea Baby unmanned surface vessel is not a simple boat with an explosive charge strapped to it. That framing misunderstands what Ukrainian engineers built over the course of this conflict. The third-generation Sea Baby variant deployed in this operation represented an engineering iteration that had absorbed every lesson from every previous maritime drone operation. The hull is a fiberglass construction optimized for minimal radar cross-section, riding low in the water. Approximately 15 centimeters of freeboard, which places its radar reflection signature below the standard sea clutter threshold of most naval radar systems operating in sea states above Beaufort 2. The propulsion is fully electric, twin motors drawing from a lithium polymer battery pack that provides approximately 12 hours of operational endurance at cruise speed. At maximum speed, approximately 42 knots. Endurance drops to roughly 90 minutes, but maximum speed is never used on approach. Approach runs are conducted at 8 to 12 knots, where acoustic and radar signatures are minimized and battery consumption is managed to ensure enough reserve for the terminal sprint. The navigation system combines GPS with inertial measurement, allowing autonomous waypoint navigation with manual override capability from the operations cell. The sensor package includes a forward-looking electro-optical camera with thermal overlay, a compact radar warning receiver that alerts the operators if the drone is being actively tracked, and a proximity sensor suite for obstacle avoidance in cluttered maritime environments. The warhead is the element Russian naval planners had most severely underestimated. Early Sea Baby variants carried approximately 200 kilograms of explosive, enough to damage, potentially enough to disable a smaller vessel. The third-generation variant deployed here carried a shaped charge warhead assembly weighing approximately 450 kilograms, configured for maximum below-waterline penetration. The shaping directs explosive energy inward and downward, optimized to breach hull plating below the waterline and create flooding damage that conventional surface explosions cannot replicate. 2 of these drones were committed to the strike. The operations cell was established in a secure facility well removed from the target area, with connectivity maintained through a relay network of maritime communication nodes. The team consisted of 4 personnel, 2 primary operators, 1 systems monitor, and 1 communications relay coordinator. In the weeks prior, they had rehearsed the approach run dozens of times on simulation systems, studying the Corvette's anchor position, the patrol boat routes, the radar coverage arcs, the timing sequences. Stay with me. What happens in the next 18 minutes of this approach destroys a doctrine an entire fleet had been built around. The drones entered the water from a launch point selected to place the initial approach vector outside radar coverage arcs. The sea state was holding. Beaufort 4, short choppy swells, enough surface texture to scatter radar returns and generate the acoustic masking the operation required. Air temperature was dropping, which increased atmospheric refraction and further degraded surface radar performance. The 2 drones proceeded in loose formation toward the outer edge of the patrol zone, running at 9 knots, navigation systems locked to their waypoints, operators monitoring feeds from the forward cameras. At this distance from the target, the thermal imagery showed the patrol craft, 2 vessels maintaining their positions, on schedule, not yet in transition. Then the operations cell received the electronic warfare signal they had been waiting for. The shore-based radar was cycling through its frequency rotation, briefly degrading the cross-referencing integration that made the system most effective. The window was approximately 4 minutes. Combined with the approaching patrol transition, combined with the sea state masking, the drones accelerated to 22 knots, pushing through the outer sonar buoy line during a period when the acoustic threshold margin was estimated to be sufficient. There was no certainty. There was only calculation and execution. The outer ring was behind them. Ahead was everything else. The patrol craft, the ship's own sensors, the lookout teams, the close-in weapon system with its surface engagement mode and its 1,500-meter lethal radius. The drones had approximately 4 kilometers to cover. At 22 knots, approximately 11 meters per second, that was 6 minutes of exposure inside the active defense envelope. The operations cell had planned for this. The approach corridor had been selected by analyzing weeks of radar coverage data, identifying a shadow zone where the geometry of the shore-based radar arrays, the patrol craft positions, and the ship's own sensor suite created a narrow azimuth of degraded coverage. The corridor was approximately 40 meters wide. At the speeds involved, staying inside it required precision navigation to tolerances no human operator could maintain while simultaneously processing threat data and making tactical decisions. An autonomous navigation system running continuously updated position corrections could do it. The drones threaded the corridor. 2 kilometers from the Corvette, the operations cell confirmed a decision that had been pre-planned but required real-time validation. The 2 drones would split, separating to approach the Corvette from 2 different vectors, approximately 60 degrees apart. The logic was calculated and cold. If the ship's close-in weapons system engaged 1 drone and successfully intercepted it, the crew would need to complete the engagement cycle. tracking, engaging, confirming destruction, before reacquiring and engaging the second target. That cycle, against a fast-moving surface target, was estimated to require between 8 and 14 seconds. 8 to 14 seconds at sprint speed. The drones had now accelerated to their maximum 42 knots, covered approximately 150 to 250 meters. The math determined whether the second drone reached the ship. Subscribe to Ukraine Radar if you want to understand how modern warfare actually works. What we are documenting here is not a news story. It is a tactical case study that will be studied in naval warfare academies for years. The split executed at precisely the pre-planned waypoint. Drone Alpha continued on the primary approach vector, slightly to port of the direct line to the Corvette's stern. Drone Bravo banked to starboard, opening the angular separation at a closing rate that would bring both drones to minimum intercept distance from the ship within approximately 45 seconds of each other. And this is where the human element of the Russian defense entered the picture. The Corvette's close-in weapons system was a modern design, capable of engaging multiple surface targets. But engaging targets arriving from divergent vectors requires the system to slew its tracking aperture across a wide azimuth. And in the seconds when it is committed to tracking one target, its coverage of the other vector degrades. The designers had optimized it for the most common threat profile, multiple targets arriving along similar vectors, as in a coordinated missile salvo. 2 drones arriving from 60-degree separation was a different problem. The lookout team on the Corvette spotted the first thermal signature at approximately 900 meters. This was later than standard detection protocols anticipated. The sea state and approach geometry had worked as Ukrainian planners modeled. The alarm went out. The close-in weapons system slewed to the contact. The radar locked. At that range. At 42 knots. The drone had approximately 41 seconds to impact. The system engaged. The first burst struck the water ahead of Drone Alpha. The second burst walked closer. The third burst. The system was correcting, tracking, tightening its solution. In the operations cell, the operator watching the Drone Alpha feed saw the screen strobing with spray as rounds struck close aboard. The feed was still live. The drone was still running. 700 meters, 600, 500. The close-in weapons system landed hits. Drone Alpha's propulsion system took damage. Speed dropped from 42 knots to approximately 28 knots as one of the twin motors failed. The navigation hold degraded, but the autonomous systems maintained the general vector. The warhead was intact. The drone was still closing. And Drone Bravo was now 600 meters from the Corvette on the starboard quarter, running full speed, completely unengaged. The crew had a choice. Continue tracking and engaging Drone Alpha, the damaged drone that was still closing but now measurably slower, or redirect engagement systems to Drone Bravo, the undamaged drone arriving from a different bearing at 42 knots. They chose to continue engaging Drone Alpha. The logic was sound. An active confirmed threat takes priority over a second contact that had not yet achieved full threat classification in the system queue. It was the wrong choice. Not because it was irrational. It was completely rational given the information and time available. It was the wrong choice because Ukrainian planners had designed the approach geometry precisely to create this dilemma. Drone Alpha was designed to absorb the engagement. Drone Bravo was designed to reach the ship. The close-in weapons system destroyed Drone Alpha at approximately 280 meters. The warhead detonated in the water close aboard the Corvette's port side. The overpressure and fragments caused damage, but not the catastrophic below-waterline penetration the shaped charge was designed to deliver. If you believe tactics win wars, type Ukraine Radar in the comments. What the Ukrainian naval operators understood, and what Russian naval doctrine had not fully accounted for, was that a coordinated two-vector attack creates a decision geometry a single defensive system cannot solve optimally. This is not a new concept in naval warfare theory. Its execution by an unmanned platform, at this level of precision, in a live combat environment against a defended warship. That was new. Drone Bravo impacted the Corvette's starboard hull at approximately 4 meters below the waterline. The shaped charge detonated. The below-waterline penetration was significant. Satellite imagery analysis in the hours following the strike confirmed a pronounced list to starboard, consistent with major flooding in at least one compartment, possibly 2. The ship's engines were not running in subsequent imagery. The vessel was held in position by its anchor and what appeared to be emergency buoyancy measures. Thermal imaging from satellite passes over the following 12 hours showed no propulsion heat signature. The Corvette could not move under its own power. Ukrainian General Staff reports confirmed the strike and described the damage as significant. USINT investigations, cross-referencing satellite imagery with publicly available ship tracking data and social media posts from Sevastopol, suggested the Corvette had been removed from the operational fleet roster, meaning it was no longer considered capable of executing its primary mission of cruise missile launch operations. A missile platform that cannot move and cannot launch missiles has ceased to be a threat. But the Russian response to this strike, and what it revealed about the Black Sea Fleet's broader strategic crisis, is the second story embedded inside this operation. In some ways, it is more significant than the strike itself. What would NATO have done differently with this kind of two-vector maritime drone attack? Comment your tactical analysis, because the doctrine implications here extend far beyond the Black Sea. The Russian naval establishment faced a compound problem. The Sevastopol harbor defense system had been designed, reviewed, resourced, and certified as sufficient to defeat unmanned surface vessel threats of the type Ukraine had demonstrated. It had not been sufficient. That failure required explanation, and the explanation Russian Naval Command could not accept, because it had direct implications for every other defended position in the fleet, was that the defensive system had been correctly designed and correctly operated, and had still failed because the attacker had found a geometric solution the system could not handle. The alternative explanation, that the crew had made errors, that the equipment had malfunctioned, that the intelligence about the patrol schedule had somehow been compromised, was far more politically manageable. It localized the failure. It did not implicate the doctrine. Intercepted communications from the Sevastopol Naval Base Command, analyzed by Ukrainian intelligence and reported through official channels, indicated significant internal recrimination in the days following the strike. Officers were reassigned. Inquiries were opened. The maintenance logs for the close-in weapons system were audited, looking for technical failures that could explain the outcome without implicating the defensive design. They did not find what they were looking for, because the defensive design was the problem. Meanwhile, the operational consequence of removing one missile corvette from the Black Sea Fleet's combat roster was not, in isolation, strategically decisive. Russia still maintained other surface combatants. But the cumulative effect of the Sea Baby campaign, the repeated, methodical reduction of Black Sea Fleet surface combat power over the course of this conflict, had created a situation where the fleet could no longer execute its historical mission of maritime dominance in the western Black Sea with the same confidence it had at the beginning of full-scale operations. Grain corridor operations, which Russia had used as a coercive lever in earlier phases, had become increasingly difficult to enforce when Ukrainian naval drones could reach and damage surface combatants at anchor in what was supposed to be a secure bastion. Turkish maritime transit, which Russia had historically been able to influence through fleet presence, was now being navigated in a context where that fleet presence was substantially degraded. This is what the strike on the Corvette represented at the strategic level, not the destruction of one ship. The progressive erosion of a fleet's ability to project power from a position it believed was safe. The question this operation forces is not just how Ukraine damaged a ship. The question is, how does a nation with no functioning surface navy systematically dismantle the surface navy of a great power using platforms that cost a fraction of what they destroy? The answer begins with engineering philosophy. The Sea Baby program is not a product of a defense procurement process that takes years to generate requirements, more years to issue contracts, more years to develop systems, and more years to field them. It is a product of iterative combat engineering, a cycle in which operational results from one generation of vehicles feed directly into the design of the next, with a development cycle measured in weeks and months rather than years and decades. Each Sea Baby variant that reached the water was a direct response to what the previous variant had encountered. When Russian patrol craft began using spotlight arrays to detect drones at longer ranges, subsequent variants incorporated better low-observable hull geometry. When sonar buoy coverage was identified as a detection mechanism, subsequent variants optimized their acoustic signature at approach speeds. When the shaped charge warhead configuration was assessed as insufficiently penetrating against certain hull sections, the warhead design was revised. This is the doctrinal innovation that underpins every individual operation. Ukraine doesn't just use weapons. Ukraine invents new ways to fight. And the inventions happen fast enough that the adversary's countermeasures are perpetually catching up to yesterday's threat, not today's. There was a moment during the terminal approach of this operation that the official reconstruction does not fully capture, but that multiple sources close to the Naval Operations Program have described. Approximately 3 minutes before the split maneuver, the communication relay network between the Operations Cell and Drone Alpha experienced a degradation event. Interference, possibly from Russian electronic warfare systems, possibly from atmospheric conditions. For approximately 90 seconds, the operators lost direct control authority over Drone Alpha. The autonomous navigation system held the course. The waypoint sequence continued executing. The drone ran its pre-programmed approach vector with no human hand on the controls. When communications were restored, Drone Alpha was precisely where it should have been. The timing was intact. The operation continued. The operators had trusted their system. The system had not failed them. But those 90 seconds when an unmanned vessel was running autonomously toward a defended warship with a 450-kilogram shaped charge warhead, with no ability for the human team to intervene if something went wrong, represent one of the defining characteristics of unmanned combat in this era. The human is not always in the loop, and sometimes that is not a failure. That is the design. The Corvette strike did not occur in isolation. It was the most high-profile event in a broader operational tempo that Ukrainian naval forces had been maintaining against Black Sea Fleet assets throughout the later phase of this conflict. The systematic nature of that campaign, its patience, its intelligence foundation, its willingness to build 11 weeks of surveillance data before committing to an operation, reflects an institutional maturity in Ukrainian special operations and naval operations that the world's military establishments were initially slow to credit. A Ukrainian naval drone program that did not exist before the full-scale invasion is now a capability that has changed the strategic balance of an inland sea. That is an achievement of engineering, of doctrine development, of human courage, and of institutional learning under the most demanding possible conditions. The operators who flew those drones, who watched the feeds, who made the split decision, who held the course through the communications blackout, who executed the timing with the precision the operation required, are doing something that naval warfare theorists are still working to fully characterize. They are conducting precision naval strike operations from positions far from open water against a defended fleet, using platforms they helped design and iterate. That is what naval power projection looks like now. The Black Sea Fleet's response to the cumulative pressure of the Sea Baby campaign has revealed something important about Russian military adaptation capacity. The fleet has relocated surface combatants further from Ukrainian drone ranges where possible. It has increased the density of harbor defense systems. It has conducted exercises specifically oriented toward detecting and engaging unmanned surface vessels. It has modified patrol patterns. None of these adaptations have halted the campaign. Some have imposed costs, forcing Ukrainian planners to develop new approach geometries, new timing windows, new combinations of conditions that create exploitable vulnerabilities. That is the nature of tactical competition. Each adaptation generates a counter-adaptation. The cycle continues. But the fundamental asymmetry, that Ukraine can build and deploy another Sea Baby for a fraction of the cost of the damage it inflicts, means that even a successful Russian adaptation in one operational area does not resolve the strategic dilemma. The exchange ratio favors Ukraine so dramatically that even a significant reduction in drone success rates still produces an economically favorable outcome. A Sea Baby costs, by various estimates, somewhere between $150,000 and $300,000 to build and operate through a strike mission. The Corvette it struck carries a replacement value measured in the hundreds of millions of dollars, requires months of dry dock time to repair if repairs are even determined to be economically viable, and is unavailable for its primary mission: cruise missile strikes against Ukrainian cities throughout that period. The cruise missiles it cannot launch, at current market rates, represent additional strategic value denied. The arithmetic is not complex. Combat footage verification from the operation, cross-referenced with satellite imagery and OSINT analysis, suggests that the damage to the Corvette included at minimum significant structural compromise of the starboard hull below the waterline, flooding of at least one primary compartment, damage to propulsion systems, and potential compromise of structural integrity that would require full dry dock. Assessment before any determination about operational restoration could be made. Ukrainian sources estimate that returning the Corvette to operational status would require extensive and time-consuming repairs. And given the condition of Russian naval repair facilities, which have themselves been the subject of Ukrainian strike attention throughout the conflict, the timeline for any restoration to operational capability extends well beyond any horizon that matters in the current operational phase. Drone operators from the Naval Operations Program, in carefully managed and security-vetted public statements, describe the operation as a demonstration that no position in the Black Sea Fleet's operational area should be considered genuinely secure. That assessment, stated quietly and without drama, may be the most strategically significant public statement made by any Ukrainian military figure in the naval domain since the beginning of full-scale operations. Here is the question that matters for anyone thinking seriously about modern naval warfare. Was the two-vector split the right tactical choice for this specific operation, or was there a higher probability approach that Ukrainian planners didn't take? Think about that as we close out. Drop your answer in the comments. There are serious tactical arguments on multiple sides, and the community here understands the details. The Black Sea, viewed in satellite imagery, has changed in a way that is difficult to fully communicate through statistics alone. In the early phase of full-scale operations, Russian Black Sea Fleet surface combatants operated throughout the Western Basin with relative freedom. They launched cruise missiles. They enforced blockades. They conducted maritime patrol operations that shaped the strategic environment across the entire region. In the current phase, those same surface combatants operate from positions deeper in the Eastern Basin, under a defensive posture that prioritizes survivability over power projection. The shift is measurable in their positioning, in their operational patterns, in the types of missions they conduct, and the types of missions they have ceased to conduct. Ukraine did this without a surface navy, without submarines, without naval aviation in the traditional sense, with engineering teams, with intelligence analysts, with drone operators, and with a willingness to treat every Russian tactical adaptation as a problem to be solved rather than a capability to be feared. Real tactics. Real consequences. Ukraine radar. The lessons of this operation extend beyond the Black Sea and beyond this conflict. The era in which a defended naval fortress could be considered genuinely untouchable by a non-state or nascent state actor operating asymmetric platforms has ended. The technology that makes unmanned surface vessels effective, low observable design, autonomous navigation, shaped charge warheads, relay communications, iterative development, is not secret. It is not proprietary. It is not beyond the reach of any organized military establishment willing to invest in engineering talent and operational learning. Every navy in the world that has assets anchored in defended harbors is now planning for a threat that, 10 years ago, would have been dismissed as theoretical. That threat has been demonstrated to be real. Its operational envelope has been mapped. Its capabilities and vulnerabilities documented in combat conditions. The textbooks are being rewritten. Will unmanned surface vessels replace conventional warships as the primary naval combat platform in the next 15 years? Comment YES or no, because this is one of the most consequential questions in military doctrine right now, and what happened in Sevastopol Roads is Exhibit A. Now for the answer to our tactical quiz from earlier in the video. Which weapon system was at the cutting edge of this strike? The answer is B, the Sea Baby unmanned surface vessel. The Storm Shadow cruise missile operates in the air domain and could not have executed a below-waterline hull strike of this type. A standard naval torpedo requires a submarine or surface ship launch platform that Ukraine does not currently operate in this context. The Sea Baby was specifically designed, iterated, and refined for exactly this mission profile. A below-waterline shaped charge attack against a defended surface combatant. The choice of platform was not incidental. It was the product of systematic capability development aligned to a specific strategic need. The detailed answer illuminates the broader lesson. The weapon system that achieves results is not always the most sophisticated or the most expensive. It is the one most precisely matched to the tactical problem it is designed to solve. Ukrainian engineers built a platform matched to this problem. They built it faster than Russian naval planners could fully adapt to it. And the results are visible in the satellite imagery. 3 questions that should shape your thinking about this operation. Was the 2-vector split approach the tactically optimal solution? Or did the loss of Drone Alpha represent a design trade-off that more resources might have resolved differently? Could the Russian Black Sea Fleet have prevented this specific strike with different resource allocations? More patrol craft, denser sonar coverage, faster close-in weapons system engagement protocols? Or had the Ukrainian planning team found a vulnerability inherent in the physics of the defense rather than its resources? And what would you have done differently as the commander of the Ukrainian naval operations team, given the same intelligence picture and the same platform inventory? These are not rhetorical questions. They are the questions that military establishments studying this operation are working through in classified settings, and the answers shape how unmanned maritime warfare will be conducted in every future conflict that involves defended naval facilities. Subscribe to Ukraine Radar. We break down the battles that textbooks will study for decades. We do not simplify. We do not editorialize. We reconstruct, we analyze, and we document what modern warfare actually looks like when the people fighting it are creative, determined, and willing to outthink an adversary that has more conventional hardware. Real battles, real tactics, real consequences. Ukraine Radar. The outer roads of Sevastopol are quieter now. The Corvette that anchored there, screening the approaches with its radar and its weapons and its crew on rotating watch, sits with a starboard list in waters. Its commanders believed it had permanently secured. The sonar buoys still drift on their tethers. The patrol craft still rotate. But the doctrine they were built to enforce has a hole in it. And everyone who needs to know about that hole already knows. The wrecks remain. Silent reminders that modern warfare punishes tactical overconfidence without mercy, that defensive systems designed to defeat yesterday's threat will encounter tomorrow's at the worst possible moment, and that the most dangerous adversary in any engagement is one that has spent 11 weeks learning exactly where your system fails. Stay vigilant.